The rain was relentless that evening, hammering against the floor-to-ceiling windows of the 57th floor like 1,000 tiny fists demanding entry. Sloane Whitmore stood motionless, watching the rivulets of water distort the glittering cityscape below into something almost abstract. Her reflection stared back at her from the glass, a woman in a crisp charcoal suit, her dark hair pulled into an immaculate low bun, not a single strand out of place. At 34, she had built an empire from nothing. Whitmore Industries was her creation, her obsession, her only child. The quarterly earnings were up 17%. Her latest acquisition had gone through without a hitch. Her name was whispered in boardrooms across 3 continents with a mixture of respect and fear. And yet, standing here in the penthouse office she had designed herself, surrounded by Italian leather and rare art and the quiet hum of a building that bore her family name, Sloane Whitmore had never felt more hollow. The phone on her desk buzzed, shattering the silence. She ignored it. It buzzed again, more insistent this time. Then again. With a frustrated sigh, she crossed the room and pressed the speaker button. "Miss Whitmore, I apologize for disturbing you," her assistant's voice came through, strained and apologetic. "But there's a situation in the lobby." "A situation," Sloane repeated flatly. "Define situation." "A man. He's been waiting for 3 hours. He says he has an appointment with you, but I've checked your calendar 3 times and there's nothing scheduled. He's refusing to leave. Security is asking if they should escort him out." Sloane pinched the bridge of her nose. "What does he want?" "He says he has a proposal for you. Something about a partnership. He's been very insistent. And Miss Whitmore, he has a child with him. A little boy. They're both soaked through. The child looks exhausted." Something shifted in Sloane's chest. She didn't know why. She had turned away dozens of desperate entrepreneurs, hundreds of people with proposals and pleas and grand visions. She had built her reputation on her ruthlessness, her ability to say no without flinching. She was the woman who had fired her own uncle when he tried to embezzle from the company. She was the woman who had driven 3 competitors into bankruptcy. She was ice and steel and unyielding ambition. "Send him up," she heard herself say. "Miss Whitmore? You heard me. Send him up." The words had left her mouth before she could stop them. She stood there, staring at the speaker as if it had betrayed her, trying to understand why she had done that. It was the rain, she told herself. The child. She was simply tired. That was all. 3 minutes later, the elevator chimed, and the doors slid open to reveal the most unlikely visitor she had ever received in her office. The man was tall, broad-shouldered, with a jaw that looked like it had been carved by someone who appreciated strength. His dark hair was plastered to his forehead, water dripping down his face, but his eyes, a startling shade of gray that seemed to see right through her, held a fire that no amount of rain could extinguish. He was wearing a suit that had once been expensive but was now wrinkled and waterlogged, the fabric clinging to his frame. And in his arms, wrapped in a too large coat that was clearly the man's own, was a small boy of perhaps 3 or 4 years old. The child had the same gray eyes as his father, wide and curious, with a mop of unruly brown hair and a smattering of freckles across his nose. He was clutching a worn teddy bear that had seen better decades, and he was looking at Sloane like she was a princess in a storybook. "I'm sorry," the man said, his voice rough. "I know this is completely inappropriate. I know I don't have an appointment. I know I'm probably the last person you want to see right now. But I've been trying to get through to your office for months, and I'm desperate. Please. Just 5 minutes of your time." Sloane stared at him. She should have been furious. She should have called security and had him removed. Instead, she found herself walking toward him, her heels clicking against the marble floor, and gesturing toward the seating area near the window. "Put the child down," she said. There are blankets in the cabinet by the sofa. And there's a bathroom through that door. You're both dripping on my floors. The man blinked, clearly not expecting this response. Thank you. Sloane watched as he gently set the boy on the sofa, unwrapping his coat from around him. The child shivered, and Sloane felt something twist in her chest. Before she knew what she was doing, she had crossed to the cabinet, pulled out a thick cashmere throw, and wrapped it around the little boy's shoulders. "What's your name?" she asked, her voice softer than she'd intended. The boy looked up at her with those gray eyes, and a shy smile spread across his face. "Finn," he said. "I'm Finn." "That's a lovely name," Sloane said. "How old are you, Finn?" 4.5, he said proudly. "My daddy says I'm a big boy." "You certainly seem like one," Sloane said. She turned back to the man, who was watching her with an expression she couldn't quite read. "I assume you have a name." "Graham," he said, stepping forward. "Graham Sterling. I own a construction company. Well, I used to own it. Now it's complicated." Sloane raised an eyebrow. "Complicated how?" Graham took a breath. "I was a partner in Sterling and Associates. We specialized in sustainable housing, eco-friendly developments, that sort of thing. A year ago, my partner ran off with the company funds, leaving me with massive debts and a reputation in tatters. The banks won't touch me. The city is about to revoke my licenses. And I have a son who deserves better than a father who can't even keep his business afloat." Sloane listened, her expression carefully neutral. She had heard stories like this before. 1,000 times. They all started the same way, a tragic fall from grace, a plea for understanding, a request for money. "Why are you here?" she asked. "What do you want from me?" Graham met her gaze, unflinching. "I'm not asking for money. I'm not asking for a handout. I'm asking for a partnership. I have the designs, the plans, the vision. What I don't have is a backer. What I don't have is someone who believes in me. I've been building things my whole life, Miss Whitmore. I built my first treehouse when I was 7. I built my first house when I was 22. I've worked with my hands, and I've worked with my mind, and I know what I can do. I just need someone to give me a chance." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a worn leather portfolio, water-stained but intact. He handed it to her, and Sloane opened it to find sketches, beautiful, intricate sketches of buildings that seemed to grow out of the earth itself, merging nature and structure in ways she had never seen before. There were houses with living roofs, apartments that breathed, communities designed to heal instead of destroy. It was visionary. It was impossible. It was breathtaking. "These are extraordinary," she said quietly. "But extraordinary doesn't pay the bills. And it doesn't repair a broken reputation." "I know," Graham said. "That's why I'm here. I've heard about you, Miss Whitmore. I know what people say. I know you don't suffer fools, and I know you don't give second chances. But I'm not asking for a second chance. I'm asking for a first chance. A chance to prove myself. A chance to build something that matters. For Finn. For the future." Sloane looked from the sketches to the little boy on her sofa, who was now playing quietly with his teddy bear, humming a tune she didn't recognize. She looked at Graham, at the desperation and hope warring in his gray eyes, and she felt something shift inside her, something she had thought was long dead. "I'll have my team review these," she said, closing the portfolio. "I'll be in touch." It was a dismissal, and Graham knew it. He nodded, his shoulders slumping slightly, and went to gather his son. "Thank you," he said. "Thank you for your time." Sloane watched them go. Graham lifted Finn into his arms, and the little boy waved at her over his father's shoulder. "Bye-bye," he said. I liked you. Sloane felt her throat tighten. Goodbye, Finn. The elevator doors closed, and Sloane stood alone in her penthouse office, surrounded by all the trappings of her success, and felt more unsettled than she had in years. The weeks that followed were a blur of meetings, negotiations, and sleepless nights. Sloane's team had reviewed Graham's portfolio and come back with glowing reports. The designs were innovative, the business plan was solid, and the man himself had a reputation for integrity that his former partner's betrayal had somehow failed to tarnish. Sloane made a decision. She would invest. She would back Graham Sterling. And against all logic, she would do it personally. The first meeting was at her office, and Graham arrived looking slightly less bedraggled than he had the first time. Finn was with him, because he had no one else to watch him, and Sloane had insisted that the boy could stay. She had set up a small play area in the corner of her office, with paper and crayons, and Finn had spent the entire meeting drawing pictures that he would later present to her with great solemnity. Miss Whitmore, one of her senior executives said, frowning. Are you listening? Sloane blinked. I'm sorry, what was that? The executive sighed. I was saying that this project is risky. Sterling may have talent, but his track record is problematic. We're talking about a significant investment with no guarantee of return. I'm aware of the risks, Sloane said, her voice cool. I've evaluated them. I've made my decision. But Miss Whitmore. I said I've made my decision. She looked around the table, meeting each face with her trademark coldness. Graham Sterling will have our backing. Full support. I want the legal team to draw up the contracts by the end of the week. I want the marketing department to start brainstorming a PR campaign. And I want the project managers to begin site selection immediately. Are there any further questions? There were none. After the meeting, Graham caught her in the hallway. You didn't have to do that, he said. Fight for me like that. I know some of your people aren't happy about this. Sloane shrugged. I don't make decisions based on what makes my people happy. I make decisions based on what's right for the company. And what's right for the company is backing the best talent. That's you. Graham stared at her. You barely know me. I know enough, Sloane said. I know your designs are extraordinary. I know you've been through hell and you haven't given up. I know your son adores you, which tells me everything I need to know about your character. That's enough for me. Graham's eyes softened. I don't know what to say. Say you'll make this project something amazing, Sloane said. That's all I ask. I will, he promised. I won't let you down. The project was called Sterling Heights, and it was everything Graham had dreamed it would be. A community of sustainable homes, built on reclaimed land, designed to be affordable and beautiful and life-changing. Sloane threw herself into it with the same intensity she brought to everything, working side by side with Graham, attending site visits, arguing with architects, dealing with contractors. It was exhausting. It was exhilarating. And it was the closest she had felt to happiness in years. But she kept her distance. She had to. Because every time Graham smiled at her, every time he touched her arm to get her attention, every time he laughed that warm, genuine laugh that seemed to light up the entire room, she felt something dangerous stirring in her chest. She couldn't afford to feel that way. She had made her life on the premise that emotions were weaknesses. That love was a distraction. That attachment was a liability. And she had been right. Her mother had taught her that lesson early. Sloane had grown up in a household that was cold and calculating, where affection was a currency to be traded, not a gift to be given. Her mother had married for money and spent every day of her marriage resenting the bargains she had made. Her father had been absent, distant, more interested in his business than in his child. Sloane had learned to rely on herself, to trust no one, to build walls so high that no one could ever breach them. She had become the ice queen of the corporate world, and she had been proud of it. But Graham Sterling was making her doubt everything. It happened on a Saturday afternoon. There was a problem with the site, and Graham had called her, his voice strained. "We have a structural issue," he had said. "I need you to see it for yourself. I know it's the weekend, but I didn't know who else to call." She had gone. Of course she had gone. She had driven across the city to the construction site, changed into a hard hat and work boots, and stood in the mud with him, listening as he explained the problem. He had been up since dawn, dealing with contractors, trying to find a solution. He had dark circles under his eyes, and his clothes were covered in dust, and he was the most beautiful man she had ever seen. "It's going to be okay," she had said. "We'll fix it. We always do." He had looked at her then, really looked at her, and something had passed between them, something electric, something terrifying. "Sloane," he had said, and it was the first time he had used her first name. "I need to tell you something." "What?" He had stepped closer, his gray eyes searching hers. "I'm in love with you. I know it's crazy. I know it's too soon. I know I have no right to feel this way. But I do. I've been falling for you since the moment you wrapped a blanket around my son and told me your name. I've been trying to deny it, to push it down, to convince myself it was just gratitude or admiration or something else. But it's not. It's love. It's real. And I need to know if you feel it too." Sloane had stood there, frozen, her heart racing, her mind screaming at her to walk away. She couldn't do this. She couldn't let herself feel this way. It was too dangerous. Too risky. Too much. She had worked too hard, built too much, to throw it all away for a man and a dream and a future she had never allowed herself to imagine. "I can't," she had whispered. "I'm sorry. I can't." She had walked away. She had driven back to her penthouse and poured herself a drink and stared at the city lights until the sun came up. She had told herself she had made the right decision. She had told herself she had done the only sensible thing. She had told herself that love was a weakness, and she was not weak. But she had never been more wrong in her life. The days that followed were the hardest of her life. Graham gave her space, respecting her decision even though she could see the hurt in his eyes every time he looked at her. The project continued, because it had to. They worked together, because they had to. But the warmth was gone, replaced by a careful, painful distance that made every interaction feel like a knife twisting in her chest. She threw herself into her work, trying to forget him. She took on new projects, new acquisitions, new challenges. She worked 18 hours a day, 7 days a week, hoping that exhaustion would numb the ache. But it didn't. Nothing did. And then, 2 months later, she got the call. It was Finn, his little voice trembling through the phone. "Miss Sloane? I need you. Daddy's sick. He won't wake up. Please come. Please." Sloane's heart stopped. She grabbed her keys and ran out the door, not caring about the meeting she was supposed to be in, not caring about anything except getting to him. She drove through traffic, breaking every speed limit, her hands shaking on the wheel. When she burst into his apartment, she found Finn sitting on the floor next to his father's bed, his face wet with tears. Graham was unconscious, his skin pale and clammy. There was an empty prescription bottle on the nightstand, and Sloane's blood ran cold. She didn't know if it was an overdose or a heart attack or something else entirely. She just knew that she couldn't lose him. She called 911. She held Finn in her arms, whispering that everything was going to be okay. She rode in the ambulance, refusing to leave Graham's side. She sat in the hospital waiting room for hours, Finn asleep in her lap, her heart pounding with fear. Finally, a doctor came out. "He's going to be okay," he said. It was a severe allergic reaction to medication. We've stabilized him. He's going to make a full recovery. Sloane burst into tears. She cried the way she hadn't cried since she was a child, huge, gasping sobs that seemed to come from somewhere deep inside her. She cried for the fear she had felt. She cried for the love she had been so afraid to admit. She cried for all the years she had wasted building walls when she could have been building a life. When they let her into Graham's room, he was awake, groggy and confused. He looked at her, and his gray eyes softened. "You came," he whispered. "Of course I came," she said, her voice fierce. "Don't you ever do that to me again. Don't you ever scare me like that." "Sloane," he said, reaching for her hand. "I'm so sorry. I don't even know what happened. I took the wrong medication, I wasn't thinking, Stop," she said, squeezing his hand. "It doesn't matter. None of it matters. The only thing that matters is that you're okay. That you're here. That I'm here." His eyes searched hers. "I thought you didn't want this. I thought you didn't want me. I was wrong," she said, her voice breaking. "I was so wrong. I spent my whole life pushing people away, convincing myself that I didn't need anyone. But I need you, Graham. I need you so much it scares me. I love you. I've loved you since the moment you walked into my office with a child in your arms and your heart on your sleeve. I was just too afraid to admit it." Graham smiled, that warm, wonderful smile that had made her fall in love with him in the first place. "I love you too," he said. "I've always loved you. And I'm not going anywhere. No matter how many walls you try to build, I'm going to keep breaking through them." Sloane laughed, a watery, happy laugh. "Promise?" "Promise," he said. "Now come here. I need to kiss you, and I can't do it from over there." She leaned down and kissed him, and it was everything she had ever wanted and more. It was warmth and safety and the promise of a future she had never dared to imagine. The next few months were a whirlwind of healing and growth and transformation. Graham recovered fully, stronger and healthier than ever. The project was completed on time and under budget, and Sterling Heights became the gold standard for sustainable housing, winning awards and accolades and changing lives. Sloane and Graham worked side by side, now as partners in every sense of the word. And then, on a warm spring evening, he knelt down on one knee in the penthouse apartment that had once felt so empty, and he asked her to marry him. She said yes, and Finn threw confetti, and Sloane realized that her life had finally begun. The wedding was a small affair, just a handful of close friends and family. Sloane's mother didn't come. She sent a cold, formal note congratulating her daughter on her life choices, and Sloane threw it in the trash without a second thought. She had learned, finally, that family wasn't about blood. It was about the people who showed up, who loved you, who fought for you. Finn was the ring bearer, carrying the rings on a velvet cushion with all the seriousness of a 4-year-old who understood that this was important. He was growing up so fast, his gray eyes and freckled nose becoming more like his father's every day. He had started calling Sloane Mama about a month after the engagement, and she had cried for an hour. She was his mother now. Not by biology, but by love. And that was enough. That was more than enough. Years passed, and Sloane and Graham built a life together. They expanded the business, creating affordable housing projects across the country. They had a daughter, a beautiful baby girl with dark hair and eyes that were all Sloane. They named her Grace, after the grace they had found in each other, the grace that had transformed their lives. And on a Sunday morning, 4 years after the wedding, Sloane sat on the patio of their beautiful new home, watching Finn teach his little sister how to tie her shoes. Graham was inside, making pancakes, and the smell of maple syrup drifted through the open window. The sun was warm on her face, the birds were singing, and Sloane Whitmore Sterling was the happiest woman in the world. She had finally learned what it meant to be whole. Not through money, not through power, not through the walls she had built. Through love. Through family. Through the incredible, terrifying, beautiful leap of faith that had changed everything. She looked at her husband as he emerged from the house, a plate of pancakes in one hand and a smile on his face. "What are you thinking about?" he asked, setting the plate down and kissing the top of her head. "Just how lucky I am," she said. "How grateful I am. How I almost let all of this go because I was too afraid to admit that I needed you." "You're not afraid anymore?" he asked, sitting down beside her. "I'm terrified," she admitted, smiling. "Every single day. Love is the scariest thing I've ever done. But it's also the best thing. The only thing that matters. I'd rather be terrified with you than safe and alone." Graham took her hand, his gray eyes shining with love. "That's the most beautiful thing you've ever said." "It's the truest," she said. "And I'm going to spend the rest of my life proving it." They sat there in the warm spring sunshine, their children at their feet, their future stretching out in front of them. And Sloane knew, with absolute certainty, that this was exactly where she was meant to be. Not in a cold tower of glass and steel, but here, surrounded by love, by laughter, by the family she had built. She was Sloane Whitmore Sterling. She was a mother, a wife, and the happiest woman in the world. And she had finally, completely, unbreakably, found her home.